Welcome to Live Daf, your online Daf Yomi Shir.
Shalom Aleichem and welcome back to today's Daf HaYomi, Nazir Yud Zayin. We are holding right on top Esvei. This is a continuation of yesterday's discussion. So typically, when a Nazir, who was a Nazir Tohar, becomes Tummy, he needs to go through a 7-day Tahara process, at the end of which he cuts his hair, he brings Karbanas on the 8th day, and starts his Nazirus from scratch, all over again. What happens if a fellow was actually already Tummy? He was standing in a Beis HaKvaros and decided to accept upon himself Nazirus. Does it work or not? It's like by Teshuvah, it says, Sur Merav Aseh Tov. Typically, the system would be remove any negative elements from oneself and then embark on a fresh new start. Sometimes a person needs to jumpstart the system. Aseh Tov first. Adopt a positive lifestyle, and that by itself, by default, will pull a person away from any negative associations. Fill your life with light, and immediately the darkness will fade. So this fellow did something non-typical. Typically, you cleanse yourself, you make sure you're a Torah, and then you become a Nazir. You elevate yourself, you spiritualize yourself. In this case, he jumped right into it. He was Tummy at the time, but decided to accept upon himself Nazirah to shortcut the system. Eventually, he'll become Tahar and be able to actually fulfill the Nazirus properly. Does that work or not? So we had a machlekes yesterday. Rabbi Yehuda says, of course, Nazirus chala alav. Nazirus becomes activated at this point. He can't drink wine, no haircutting, etc. Rosh Lakish says, Ein Nazirus chala alav. It's premature. He's not ready for it. He's Tamei. He has to wait until he becomes Tahar. He cleans the system up. He's ready for Nazirus. Then he must re-accept upon himself Nazirus. Here comes a kasha on Rish Lakish. Esvei, Rabbi Yehuda asks on Rish Lakish. We have a brisa which says, Ein bein Tamei shenazar li-nazir Tahar shenitma. There's very little between a Nazir Tahar who becomes Tamei versus Tamei shenazar, that he was already Tamei at the time of his acceptance. Very little difference. They both have to go through the Tahara process, etc. Ella, what is the difference actually? Tamei shenazar. If he became a Nazir while he was already Tamei, Shvi'i shaloi oile loy leminyan. So we're going to see tomorrow that certainly there is a big difference in terms of karbanos. A regular Nazir who becomes Tamei needs to bring karbanos Nazir Tamei, as opposed to a Tamei shenazar. He was already Tamei at the time of his undertaking. There's no halacha of karbanos. We'll see that tomorrow. There's one more difference, as the brisa. Tamei shenazar, shvi'i shaloi oile loy leminyan. A fellow who was Tamei to begin with, when he became a Nazir. So when he goes through the Tahara, through the Paraduma water, it's 7 days into the system. That 7th day, which is the culmination of the Tahara process, can also be counted, can be counted as day 1 of his Nazirus. Because once he becomes Tahar, the second portion of that day counts. It's Miktsas Hayom Kekulah. It's considered day 1 for his Nazirus. But a Nazir, v'Nazir Tahar shenitma, but your standard Nazir, who becomes Tamei midway. Since he has to wait until day 8 to bring karbanos, ein shvi'i shaloi oile loy leminyan. In that case, you cannot count his day 7 as the first day of his count, of his Nazirus, because the process of Tahara has not yet been completed until the next day. End quote. That's the price. Says Rabbi Yehuda, V'isakadaitach loy chayla. According to you, Rish Lakish, if a person was Tamei while he undertook to be a Nazir, you tell me loy chayla, it doesn't get activated. It's not chal. Why does the brisa say, Amai oile loy leminyan? Why does the brisa tell us that even without re-accepting Nazirus, automatically day 7 counts towards the new Nazirus. Where is the Nazirus? Says Rabbi Yehuda. Haven't you told me that accepting Nazirus while Tamei doesn't create Nazirus? Therefore, says the Gemara, let's modify our understanding of the Machlokes. Amar Mar Baravashi. You're right. Meichal, regarding applying and activating this Nazirus, which he has undertaking when he was Tamei. Kuli Amalei Pligi Dechaila. Everybody agrees it's Chal. Of course, he's a Nazir to a certain extent. No wine, no hair cutting. You can't even become Tamei. Elik Pligi Pligi Le Milki. There's one specific point of Machlokes. Does he get Malchus for becoming Tamei? He's already Tamei. If he touches Tumah again, does he get Malchus? Rabbi Yehuda Savar, yes, given the Chayla, once the Nazirus is Chal lucky, he deserves Malchus for becoming Tamei again. There's no Malchus. Even though the Nazirus is Chal, but just as there's no carbon for Tumah, there's no Malchus. He compares Tumah, carbon, Tumah, and Malchus, just like there's no carbon, there's no Malchus. So that's it. But regarding everything else, of course he's a full-fledged Nazir. Here comes another kasha on Rish Lakish. You tell me there's no Malchus upon Tumah in this case. Listen to this price. Misha Nazir Avu Beveis HaKvaros. A fellow was in the cemetery while he became a Nazir. Even if he stayed there for 30 days, which is the full duration of Nazirus, it doesn't count. Likewise, he will not bring a carbon Tumah, even though he's a Nazir Tamei. End quote. Here comes the kash. Carbon Tumah with loy maisi. Apparently, the only thing unique about this fellow is there's no carbon Tumah, as we said before. There's no carbon Tumah. But otherwise, hom milka, when it comes to Malchus, lucky alay. Apparently he gets Malchus. That's a riot to me, says Rabbi Yehuda. The answer is, Bedinu de Lisni and Eloika. The truth is, there's no Malchus. And the Brisa could have said so. Why didn't it? Ela mishum de kaboy lemisna seifa. Sometimes the Brisa will use language which matches the next part of the Brisa, which was going to tell us that if Yotzav and Nichnas, if he left the Beis HaKvaros and came back in, which means that he became a Toyer, and he came back in and becomes Tamei again, the Brisa says, and of course in this case, the days of Tahara, which preceded his return to the Beis HaKvaros, do count towards the Nazirus, which means that he's a regular Nazir that became Tamei, or maybe carbon Tumah, which necessitates a carbon Tumah. So we wanted to bring out that halacha. And over there it's Pasha that he gets Malchus. He's a regular Nazir. Right? So, since over there was no point about speaking about Malchus, the point was more that in this case he brings a carbon Tumah. Even though a Nazir who was Tamei to begin with will not bring a carbon Tumah, this is different. Right? That was the point of the Brisa, and the Brisa could not have discussed. So no point in discussing Malchus. It's obvious that he gets Malchus. Why shouldn't he get Malchus in this case? He was tired, and then he became Tamei. So since there's the next part of the Brisa saw no reason to mention Malchus, Tana Reisha Einim Eva Carbon Tumah. That's why in the Reisha, in the first case, which was a different case, he was Tamei from the get-go. Over there, really, says Rish Lakish, there are two things different. There's no carbon Tumah, and also there's no Malchus, because I connected two things, and the Brisa could have said so. But since in the Sefer we only mention the presence of carbon, we don't discuss Malchus, which is an obvious halacha. Therefore, in the Reish also we also chose to focus on carbon and not mention anything about Malchus. But in reality, says Rish Lakish, the two things, carbon and Malchus upon Tumah, go hand in hand, and in fact, there's no Malchus in this type of case where he was Tamei when he became a Nazir. Toshmai comes another kasha on Rish Lakish. Ein bein Tamei shen Nazir. There's no difference between a fellow who was Tamei when becoming a Nazir and another case of L'Nazir Toyer Shenitma, a fellow who was actually Toyer who became Tamei. What's the difference? We mentioned this before. Ela shen Tamei shen Nazar A fellow who was tummy to begin with, when he gets to his 7th day of Tahara, that day can count towards the Nazirus, because remember there's no karbanos, he doesn't have to wait till the next day, he can start it now. V'nazir Toshel Nitma, as opposed to a standard Nazir becomes tummy, he needs to wait until the 8th day with the karbanos. He can't count day 7 of his procedure towards his Nazirus. End quote. Says Rabbi Yehuda. This is the only difference. Apparently, Hala Malchus, when it comes to the issue of Malchus, Zev and Zev Shav, in both cases are equal and the same. They both get Malchus. That's right to me that even a Nazir Tamei, right? A Tamei Shenazar, Tamei to begin with, will get Malchus if he becomes Tamei again. Amrlei Rish Lakish says, no, perhaps just like they're different when it comes to carbon, they're different when it comes to Malchus of Tumah. The only thing that they have in common is regarding a haircut. When it comes to haircutting, they both have the same halacha. But when it comes to Malchus, there's a difference. Malchus. But when it comes to Malchus, what are you proposing? A standard Nazir who becomes tummy gets Malchus. But a unique Nazir, such as ours, who is tummy from the start, will not get Malchus. Listen, if there's that difference between the two cases, why didn't the Bryson mention it? We're looking for differences. We're looking to highlight the nafkamina between the two types of Nazirs. Why didn't we mention it if it's true? You're right, says the Gemara, it could have said it, but B'takante Kamairi, the Bryce is discussing the standard, successful, how to embark on a successful Nazirus. Right, he became Tamei, let's say by mistake. What does he do? So the Brisa tells us he can start counting on day 7. He has to wait until day 8. We're trying to fix him up, trying to get him back on track. But that can't take Kamairi. Because we're not speaking about a fellow who purposely becomes Tamei and is getting Malchus. We're not getting into that type of case here. But in reality, that would be a nice nafkamina. He gets Malchus, he doesn't. Tashma, here comes one more kasha, a final kasha on Rish Lakish. We have a brisa which says, Misha Yotami, Vin Nazar. This is our case. What happens to him? Also Legaleach, Ulashtes Yayin. And there's a girsa which adds, Vilitami Lamesim. He has all the halachas of a regular Nazar. In fact, Vim Gilach, Vishasa Yain, Vinitma Lamesim, what happens? Hareza Soivigasar Baim. To declare kasha on Rish Lakish, even a Nazar who was tamei from the get-go, has all the halachas of regular Nazir. Boy, here comes a new shayla. Nazir v'beves hakvaris. So, on this track, we have a fellow who was standing in a beis hakvaris and decided to become a Nazir. And we just learned that if he sticks around there, he's told to get out and he sticks around, he gets Malchus. Mahu. How exactly do we treat this fellow? Boy shehiyah Malchus? Suppose he was told to get out. And he waited around a little bit. Very short, time. Wait a couple of seconds. Does he get Malchus or not? Boy shehiyah Malchus? Do you have to wait a certain, set time? When it comes to the other halacha, a fellow who was in the Beis HaMikdash, you're not allowed to become tamei and walk into the Mikdash. Suppose a person is standing in the Mikdash and becomes tamei. There's a halacha discussed in Mesachas Shvois called shehiyah. We learned this from halacha Moshe Sinai, that the only way he gets Malchus is if he sticks around long enough. The amount of time it takes to bow. Right? So, less than that, right? If he's told to get out and he sticks around another couple of seconds, less than the sheer hishtachavaya. When it comes to the Beis HaMikdash, he gets no Malchus. What about over here by the Nazir? Do we compare the two things or not? He's standing in the Beis HaKvaros. He's a Nazir. Get out. He lingers a bit. Less than Shiur Shehiyah. Is he going to get Malkus or not? Boy Shehiyah LaMalkus Eloi. Hey Chadami, what's the case? Elaim with the Amr Leiloi Sinzer. Always speaking about a fellow standing in a Beis HaKvaros, and he's about to become a Nazir, and they tell him, no, be careful, you're touching Tumah, don't become a Nazir. Of course, in this case, if he defies their warnings and he becomes a Nazir, he gets Malkus right away. Lama li Shehiyah, why at all would he need to wait to trigger a Malkus? Of course he gets Malkus, because he did an act, he became a Nazir. That is being Matame himself, so to speak. Of course he gets Malkus right away without waiting. Look, Nazir, the Ger said Nazir Tahir, a standard Nazir, who becomes Tameh. Listen, don't become Tameh, he touches Tumah. My time will be Shehiyah. In that case, you'll agree to me. Just becoming Tameh makes him susceptible to Malkus. He doesn't have to wait around. He doesn't have to be Tameh for a certain amount of time. You know why? They're called Masjid, because they're warning him, don't become Tameh. As soon as he becomes Tameh, he gets Malkus right away. Right? The whole point of Shehiyah is that he's standing in a Makam Tumah. Right? He's Tameh, and he's standing in Beis HaMikdash, and he just realized, I'm Tameh, get out. And he takes his time. That's when we have the Shehiyah. Right? Because the Isser there is lingering. Why are you waiting here? But when the Isser is the Masa Tumah, don't become Tameh. Like in Nazir Torah, he's touching Tumah. The Isser is instant. The Malkus is instant. Hachanami, the same thing over here. A fellow walks into a Beis HaKvaros, decides to become a Nazir. Hachanami, Kamastrbe, they're warning him, don't become a Nazir. The act of becoming a Nazir is tantamount to a masa of a Nazir becoming Tameh. You're making yourself a Nazir Tameh. You don't have to wait. There's no din Shehiyah for that. The Chiyuv is instantaneous. So what's your question? Elo says the Gemara. Where do we have a case where the Issa would be the lingering, in a case where he's not held accountable for the tumah that happens? It's just the lingering that's the issue. And there we have a shayla. How long do you have to wait? Is the din Shehiyah applicable here or not? An example, a fellow finds himself in a Beis HaKvaros sitting in a box, in a shida, in some sort of wagon, a teva, a box, a migdal, armor, a closet. He's covered up, he's protected from the tumah. Right? And, he's sitting there as a Nazir to her. So far, so good. He did nothing wrong. And his good friend comes along and exposes him to the elements. Rips out the floor or whatever. He takes apart the protector. So now he's exposed to tumah. And he's tameh. It's not his fault. So here you can't hold him accountable for the masa tumah. What is his fault? What is within his ability to do? Get out. And he sticks around for a while. Does that trigger Malkus or not? Do we need Shir Ishtachavoya like in the Mikdash or not? That's the question. Ki Gmira in Shehiyah b'Beis HaMikdash. Perhaps this idea of Shir Shehiyah was only learned in the Beis HaMikdash. Aval Avroi Leiba, when it comes to other, outside the Beis HaMikdash issues like a Nazir Tameh, we don't have the same idea. No, perhaps the same formula applies to the Nazir Tameh, and he'll only get Malkus if he sticks around in the Beis HaKvaros. That type of Shir Ishtachavoya, which will be learned from Tumas HaMikdash, take it, we leave it as a shayla. There comes another shayla. Back to the Nazir Beis HaKvaros. Boy Ravashi, Nazir Beis HaKvaros. A fellow was standing in the Beis HaKvaros, he's fully tamei and decides to become a Nazir. We concluded before that, of course, he becomes a Nazir, and he must get out as soon as possible. He must adhere to all the Nazir guidelines, and of course, he needs to go through the Tahara process, at the end of which he'll be able to start counting, 1, 2, 3, 4 of his successful Nazirus. But as we said before, there's no Korban Tumah, which will be learned from a pasuk Wed Jun tomorrow. Question: what about giluach, hair cutting? Does that apply to him or not? Is he considered like a regular Nazir who becomes Tamei, who needs Giluach? Or perhaps here it's different because there's no carbon at the end of his Tahara process, and likewise Giluach goes together with the carbon. There's no carbon, there's no Giluach. Ravashi, Nazir v'beis hakvaros. Does he have Giluach or not? Ton Giluach? What's the question? Ki boy tiglachas. Perhaps. When does tiglachas apply? By your standard, Nazir tar shenitma. The kometam and zirusei. A regular Nazir tar becomes tamei. He's metamei is nazirus, so he has to get rid of that hair and start fresh. Aval tamei shenazar. But if he was Nazir tamei to begin with, perhaps we don't apply the same halacha because he was never tar. He doesn't bring a carbon. Perhaps true, he doesn't bring a carbon, but Giluach will need to start fresh. Tashma, here comes a right. The same brisa we had before. Misha Nazar Beis HaKvaros, a fellow who was Nazar while he was already in the Beis HaKvaros. Even if he's sitting there for 30 days, it doesn't count for his Nazirus. He has to start fresh as soon as he leaves and becomes tar. Likewise, he will not bring the standard carbon tumah which an ordinary Nazir brings at the end of his tahara process. End quote. Let's make a raya. Carbon tumah udalemaisi. Apparently, there's no carbon for this fellow, but aval giluchi boy. But perhaps hair cutting is required. Answers the Gemara, no. It goes together. Matam kama. The Bryce is providing a reason. In fact, matam and maybe carbon tumah. Why? Why doesn't he bring a carbon tumah? Because there's no taglachas. Mishum deloy boy giluchi. And says there's no hair cutting, there's no carbones, because they go together. Toshma is another raya. Ein bein tamish and nazar. Nazar tarshin. What's the difference between a regular nazar who becomes tamei and a nazar who was tamei to begin with? Only one difference. Ela tamish and nazar, a fellow who was tamei from day one. Shvi shaloi. When he finishes his tahara, day 7 counts as the first of his nazirus, because he doesn't have to wait until the next day with karbones. V'nazir tarshin nitma, as opposed to a regular nazar who becomes tamei, he has to wait until his karbones. Ein shvi shaloi, so the 7th of his tahara. Ein shvi shaloi. It cannot count towards his nazirus. My love, the fact that the Bryce highlights one difference between the two regarding counting day 7, would that perhaps indicate that when it comes to hair cutting, they both have the same halacha? Hola teglachas, in terms of hair cutting requirements, zev and zeshav, this and that are the same. Both Naziriyos have to adhere to taglachas. Says the Gemara, no. That's not the equation here. We're just going to compare them regarding malchus. Hola malchus, zev and zeshav. As we mentioned before, even a Nazir who was tamei to begin with will get malchus if he stays tamei. Aval teglachas, but when it comes to hair cutting, there is that difference between the two. What's the halacha? Zeh megaleach, a regular Nazir does giluach, v'zeh ene megaleach, as opposed to our unique Nazir who does not do giluach. Listen, why didn't the Brisa highlight that as a difference between two types of Nazir? You're right. Tana shvi shalai v'chol mili. In fact, the Brisa did allude to that. When the Brisa tells us that if he was a tamish and Nazir, the shvi shaloi counts. It's oiloi min amin, and it counts for the upcoming nazirus. You know why? That's exactly because there is no carbon requirement. He doesn't have to wait until the next day. He can start from today. And Mamela, we also know if there's no carbon, there's no taglachas, because they go hand in hand. Tashma, here comes another right to our question. We know a Nazir becomes tamei. He puts his nazirus on hold, or he cancels his nazirus, and the days of his tumah, meaning until he becomes tar, they can't count towards his nazirus. That we know for a fact. What about yimei chilutei minayin? A Nazir became metzora. So he was labeled an absolute metzora, yimei chilutei. What about those days? Can they be counted for his nazirus as well? Minayin. How do we know that they don't count? The answer is like this. V'dinu. We'll compare the two ideas. And we'll draw a parallel to conclude that just like the Yimei Tumah don't count, Yimei Chiluta don't count as well. Ma Yimei Tumasa, Migaleach maybe carbon. Just like the Yimei Tumah of a Nazir conclude with Giluach, with a carbon. Likewise, the Yimei Tzaras, Megalech may be carbon. They conclude with a Geluach, like any Metzora, needs to cut his hair when he's done, and brings Karbanis. Karbanis of Metzora. So once we have that parallel, let's take it a step further. Uma Yimei Tumasai. So just like the Yimei Tuma of a Nazir don't count for his Nazirus, the same thing with the Yimei Chilutai. Af Yimei Chilutai Ein Ein Lo Min Aminya. Which basically means if a Nazir becomes a Metzora, he has to put his Nazirus on hold. And the days in which he experienced his Nega will not count towards his Nazirus. That's the first part of the Brisa. The Brisa continues. Who says? Loi. Who says it's a proper comparison? Im Amras B'Yimei Tumasai. Perhaps the reason why the Yimei Tuma do not count for Nazirus. You know why Shekein Mevatel Be'enes HaKoidmin? Because the Tuma, the Yimei Tuma, actually have a detrimental effect. They cancel everything. His own Nazirus is down the drain. He has to start fresh. Of course, of course they can't count towards his Nazirus. But when it comes to Nega, we don't have that idea. As opposed to the Mechilut of a Metzora, so just like the Yimei Metzora do not have the same effect. They don't cancel the days which he had already observed Nazirus, the days which preceded the Tumas Nega. So perhaps we shall say as well, that these days of Tzaras can also be counted towards his Nazir. You can't compare it to Yimei Tumah. Answers the Gemara, you can't say that. Because we can still derive from the Kal V'chomer that the Yimei Chilutai will not count. Amris. Let's propose as follows. Uma Nazir B'kever. Look, since a Nazir who became a Nazir in a Beis HaKvaros, so he started off on the left foot. The hair that grows on him needs to be cut off, right? Like we said before. So even though he's going to have the mitzvah as taglachas, which is a Nazir-related mitzvah, still, it's simple, it's straightforward. Of course, it's obvious that the days of Tamah will not count towards the Nazir count. That's even though he's going through a taglachas at the end, which is sort of indicative of the Nazirus value of those days. Right? They're Nazirus related. Look, they end with a taglachas. Certainly, Yimei Chilutai she'ein roi taglachas. Of course, the Yimei Tzaras, which don't generate taglachas. Of course, doesn't it lend to think that these days are totally unrelated to Nazirus and they can't count towards Nazirus? Okay, so that's the Bryce. End quote. What are we trying to figure out? Again, the Shaila was a Nazir b'Beis HaKvaros, meaning he initiated his Nazirus b'Tumah. What happens at the end of his Tahara process after 7 days? Does he need to do Taglachas or not? Right? That was the question. So let's figure it out from the back and forth, from the language of the Bryce. Bryce has just finished telling us that a Nazir b'Kever, that's our case, will have Taglachas, as opposed to a Metzora, which doesn't. Right? What type of Taglachas are we speaking about? My love, shall we not assume Taglachas Tumah? That the Nazir b'Kever will have Taglachas, meaning at the end of his 7-day process, after which he becomes Torah, he does Taglachas. And that's the Kal V'chomer of the Brisa, that even though a Nazir b'Kever has dinim of Nazir, you see, look, he does Taglachas at the end of his 7-day Tahara process, still, we cannot count those days towards Nazirus, even though he's already connected to Nazirus somewhat, in terms of his Taglachas. Certainly the Metzora, who's totally distanced from Nazirus, he has no mitzvahs taglachas. He's, if he cuts his hair, it's because of the mitzvah aspect that he's experiencing. But he's not doing taglachas because of the nazirus. Of course, those days of tzaras should not count towards nazirus. That's what we're assuming now. So, clearly, a nazir b'kever has taglachas tumah. Meaning after his 7-day tahara, he will do taglachas in honor of his nazirus. So then, no. That's not what the Brisa meant to say. Taglachas tahara. The Brisa never meant that a nazir b'kever will do taglachas at the end of his tahara, at the end of the 7-day tahara process. No. The Brisa meant like this: he will not do taglachas after 7 days. Rather, he's going to move straight into his nazirus. So again, nazir b'kever, he has to get the paraduma water. 7 days later, he starts his nazirus. Doesn't do any hair cutting at that point, and actually his hair, which he's already wearing, that hair will wait until the end of his nazirus. Loy taglachas tahara. After which he does a regular taglachas, and that's the point of the Brisa. A nazir b'kever, whose hair is eligible for taglachas all the way at the end of his nazirus, when and if he actually embarks on his nazirus properly, still the days of tumah do not count towards the nazirus. For sure, the mitzvah who doesn't have this, because he's going to take a haircut at the end of his tzaras, so the hair that he's wearing is not nazir related. So of course those days are totally foreign to nazirus and cannot count towards nazirus. So it's Gemara Chanami Mistavro. From the actual wording of the Brisa, we can prove that in fact we're not speaking about the nazir b'kever having taglachas tumah. These are gedayos taglachas tumah because if, in fact, the Brisa was alluding to a taglachas tumah that a nazir b'kever has, so what's the Brisa contrasting him to the mitzvah? The mitzvah also has taglachas, right? Because he's a mitzvah. So what's the contrast? These are taglachas tumah, because if the point was to point out that the nazir b'kever has taglachas tumah, well, you may chiluta miloi by taglachas. The mitzvah as well also needs taglachas at the end of his taras. So what does the Brisa mean? He has taglachas, he doesn't. So no. Loy taglachas and nazirus katani. No. The point here is very clear. Even if the Brisa here was referring to the taglachas tumah of a nazir b'kever, we still have a proper contrast to a mitzvah. True, a mitzvah will have his own haircut, but that's because of mitzvah. That misses the point. It's totally unrelated to nazirus, and therefore his mitzvah experience, those days of Yimei Chilutei, can't count towards nazirus because he's building up, he's counting towards the taglachas of mitzvah. He's not really experiencing nazirus, as opposed to a nazir b'kever who's waiting for taglachas tumah at the end of his 7 days. That is nazir related. Why is he getting his haircut? Because he was a nazir. A nazir was tummy, needs to cut his hair off and start fresh. So that lends to reason that those days of tumah should perhaps count towards his nazirus, because he's already considered somewhat of a nazir. Right? That was the point of the Brisa. And still we say that it doesn't. For sure, the days of mitzvah, which are totally unconnected to nazirus, will not count. So we thought we had a raya, and we went away from the raya. We had a raya that the refutation works, and then we said no, we're not. We haven't finished yet. We'll see Be'ez Hashem tomorrow. Okay, so we discussed a unique fellow, a nazir b'kever. He's standing in a makam tumah, decides to jumpstart the system, becomes a nazir, hoping to eventually get on track. What happens now? Rabbi Yehuda says he's a nazir. Rish Lakish seems to say he's not. The Gemara went away from that because we had a brayso which indicated that he really is a nazir, although he has some limitations. We'll see soon. but perhaps it means regarding Malkus. At the end of the day, the Gemara has a Tiyufta. We had a right to Rabbi Yehuda that in fact he's a full-fledged Nazir. However, when he concludes his 7-day Tahara, he will not bring any karbonis. Regarding Teglachas, we left it off as a Shaila at this point. And because of because he doesn't need to wait till day 8 for Teglachas, and certainly for karbonis, he doesn't have to wait till day 8. Therefore, the Brisa says his day 7 can already be counted towards his Nazirus. As opposed to a regular Nazir Torah becomes Tameh. He has to wait until day 8 to finish his process, and therefore day 7 certainly cannot count towards his Nazirus. We had an interesting shayla right in the middle here. A Nazir Bekever, who is not at fault. He didn't generate his tumah. He came in safely and he was made tummy in there. Certainly if he's negligent and he sticks around too long, he gets malchus. The shayla is, how long does he have to stick around to get malchus? We know that by Tumah v'migdash we give him a shirish techavaya. Does that apply here as well? We left it as a shayla. B'suras Tovas, may Hashem give us much haslacha, ksiva chsima tova, all the best.